Charlottesville Inside Out is made possible thanks in part to its patrons, committed to supporting the people, places, and quality of life that uniquely define Charlottesville and its surroundings, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
You have to try to relax when you're playing with Lovell because you truly don't know what's going to happen, but it's always fun.
I love the concept of missions that sort of gets you up and says, you know, I'm going to create something.
For WHTJ, I'm Terry Allard, and this is Charlottesville Inside Out.
That's me right there.
Yeah.
But people don't really realize what a treasure he is. And he knows fiddle tunes back from the old days that there's no other source for them.
Today we're going to visit a musician who was born and raised in Charlottesville. He's been playing fiddle in our community and beyond for over 80 years and shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. Join us as we sit down with Lovell Coleman and his lovely wife Edith. Come on. What is it you love so much about playing fiddle? Because you clearly love playing fiddle.
The story goes, Lovell picked up the fiddle when he was 13 years old. He never put it down since then.
I know. So Edith, you're the schedule keeper here in general, and Lovell, you're playing all the time. Tell us about how many times a month Lovell plays, and tell us about some of the bands that he's working with.
Well, he plays at Rosewood, Greenbrier, and at Forest Lakes once a month. And he plays down at Pace's daycare every other month. And he plays with Jody Stevens and her gang 4 times a month. And anything else that comes up in between. And along with the doctors for him and I, appointments, it takes up about 20 days a month.
Working in the garden every day is one of the things that keeps me alive. I work the garden out every day. Even when it rains, I do.
And you mow the lawn too.
We come along with this thought in our minds that, well, by the time I get to be 80, I won't be able to do much of anything. I don't look at it that way anymore because I have Lovell as an example every day. So, yeah, I'm gonna run this thing out as long as I can. Let's see where this goes.
When I first met Lovell, I was a little afraid to play with him because he did all this fancy stuff on the fiddle, and I just kind of quietly played my mandolin in the background. But over so many years, our music has grown together.
We've been playing with Pete and Ellen. We started with them when they were playing for dances in Earlsville and different places. And that's been about 32 years.
Wow.
But we only been with John and Rose, I say, for about 8 years. And we started regular going every week when we took up with the Hinton Airs in '07. And then after Lovell started, different people heard about it, and they wanted to come and play with Lovell and do their part for the nursing homes.
Yeah.
And we did that for about 10 years.
So you started with the Virginia Vagabonds, right? That was your
I
first...
was one of the original Vagabonds.
And that was in 1930...
37.
37. Who was in that band, Lovell?
Clevis Harris was the got it started, he was a graduate of middle school, and he had played music in a band in middle school before he left there, and he started his own band.
What was that famous line that your dad said? Because you would go to school, and then at night you'd be playing with the Virginia Vagabonds, and you'd be up all night, and you'd have to get up and go to school. And what did he say about that fiddle?
What my father say is,
the fiddle would be the ruination of Lovell Coleman.
Said it was what I was doing was the ruination of Lovell Coleman, and somebody made a movie of that.
Ross, your friend, Ross McDermott made a film called The Ruination of Lovell Coleman.
Right. I was hired as a teenage fiddler. We'd play for a dance in Savannah Lake till 12 o'clock, and then have to drive back to get home to get to bed by 2 o'clock in the morning, and have to go to school the next day. My father, he told my mother that fiddle is going to be the ruination of Lovell. And I'm so glad that I got to be ruined.
You've played the fiddle your whole life, but your livelihood, your career has involved being in the military and being a builder. So you built buildings all over Charlottesville.
That's right. Somebody was telling where they'd seen Lovell, and he was on the roof of a house off of Rowell Road somewhere. And he was carrying the shingles, doing the whole business by himself. One-man operation.
Yeah.
When they put the roof on this house over here, they had 8 people on the roof to do the same job.
It's a little bit of a shocker, but Edith cannot stop him from climbing in the crawl space, climbing on the roof. For Lovell, it's not all about the music. He has a very full, busy life.
Edith takes care of him every single day. That is her thing. And whatever Lovell needs, Edith is right there. It's amazing. They are inseparable.
Edith, tell us about some of the projects, because you've been around while he's been doing a lot of these different projects.
He worked at Second Yard on Market Street for Evelyn Marshall, and she has a shop in Virginia Beach and one in Roanoke. And he did work on all 3 places.
And remodeling what's now the hospice house.
On Park Street. It used to be Rosewood, and it's hospice now. He remodeled that for Mrs. Taboo. He built Northside Baptist Church, and in '77 he was putting the rafters up, and a wind came and he fell off of the rafters. He landed where the pulpit would normally be. It was only crushed bricks and mortar and cinder block, and he broke his back.
Oh my.
And he went to the hospital, and they told him that he'd never walk again. So they built him a body cast. After 2 weeks, they let him go. They thought he was going home. He went back to Northside on Rowell Road.
Oh no.
And nothing had been touched since he left the job, so he gets up on the ladder and goes up to the rafters, and he starts putting the rafters up, and his men that he had working for him managed to finish the church.
Oh my goodness.
And he built Lambs Road Baptist Church, and that's near, he was a builder there. And then he put addition on Chestnut Grove, and he built a house for my son on Ed Jones Road, and he built a house for his daughter down in Louisa, and he built 2 houses in Ruckelsville, mostly by himself.
I think she's bragging about you. I think she's pretty impressed with all your work.
That's not usually her way of referring to me.
He's a workaholic, because when he worked on a house, he didn't know when quitting time was.
Clearly.
And when he had a job out of town, and he'd go up there to work 8 hours, he'd end up working 16.
And Edith, you're just the same because he's out there growing everything in the garden, you're canning everything, you're cooking, you're keeping up all the appointments.
And he likes to sit back and wait till the food's on the table, and you have to beg him to put his fiddle down. But his brother told him yesterday, "Brother, put the fiddle down. It's time to eat."
We're playing here at Rosewood, and my bandmate is playing these tunes, and one of his bandmates that he used to play with was born in 1860. And I say, I can hardly get my head around that.
He teaches us things constantly. He brings enthusiasm and love in our world. He's just so dear.
I never really played a lot of the old fiddle tunes, and I've really come to appreciate a whole lot of those.
Sometimes I freak back to way back for something to play. And the guys I'm playing with, when I was bringing that one on, where did you pick that one up? It's 100 years old.
Tell us about your other love. We know about Edith. Tell us about your fiddle.
When my grandkids come out, the first thing I want to do is practice on my fiddle. And I grip it thing and I run.
I know, you wouldn't let me hold it either. I don't blame you. So tell me real quick, you've been doing this forever, and you've had health issues before, but you're just going and going and going. How do you think that is?
In spite of those 3 cancer operations, they told me I wasn't going to do anything anymore. I finally come to the conclusion that if I go tomorrow, that's fine. But I'm going to keep on doing what I want to do. And the heck with Edith and everybody else.
I think Edith helps you do what you want to do. Don't you think?
I'm just kidding about that. I do what my mom wants to do. And it's usually a pretty good decision.
I think it does work out pretty good. And I think that fiddle's worked out pretty good for you too, Lovell. Yay!
I was just so surprised that everything has a plan. Did it get a blueprint? I mean, how did it come about? So there are lots of things you don't know that come up when you try to know things.
Our guest today is a well-respected photographer in our community. He is also a collector who has made it his mission to understand how everything on this earth works. Join us as we sit down with Robert, known to his friends as Bob, Llewellyn. Come on. So Bob, what inspired you to become a photographer?
It actually goes all the way back to high school, which was quite a while ago. And I got interested in photography just because it was sort of magic, how to think, you know, that you could see a print come up in the developer. And so I started taking pictures, and I took a class in journalism, and the journalism teacher was also the yearbook advisor. And he comes to me one day and says, Bob, I want you to be the editor-in-chief of the yearbook. And I said, excuse me? I mean, yeah, I'll take some pictures for you. He said, no, I want you to be the editor-in-chief. And I said, well, I don't know anything about putting together a yearbook. He said, no, I just want you to take the camera around, have it with you all day, and I want you to make a photographic story of life at this school. So there's a tendency to rise to a potential when someone sees you that way. which he did. And I did take the camera everywhere. And I mean, I began to discover all these people. I began to discover other people begin to see me. I begin to see girls.
So,
it's just
because suddenly you're not invisible anymore either. You have the camera, and people see you.
And I'm not shy, and I'm very, like I'm mission oriented. So I'm going to go do this, and I just never look back. It's just, this is great. I love doing this, and I love the exploration of what's here that was always hiding in plain sight. I never saw it until I picked up the camera. And
now, when you see, you don't just look. You see. There's a big difference, you say, between looking and seeing.
Right. When we see sort of an angle like this, we see everything. And we have a very narrow point of vision. We see, like a face or something. We look right at that. But when you put the camera up, all that stuff's back there. So now you have to organize it. And that's sort of the fun part.
And that's some of your biggest advice. When people ask you, young photographers, you suggest that people do what lights them up, in quotes, because it's to be passionate about what your work is a gift and something that you would wish for anybody, right?
Well, why would you come to Earth and not seek being lit up?
Yeah.
I mean, you come to Earth to be, just there. I mean, so people come to me, and talk about, well, I like what you do. I want to be a photographer. And so they're lit up a bit. And I say, okay, well, you got to say, okay, you're a photographer right now. And they say, well, I don't know how to do all the things you do or everything I have to do. I said, okay, so you're a photographer, go find out.
Right, owning it. And then talk about the advice about what you do or you don't put in that rectangle in the box.
The rectangle has you pay attention to every little thing. And you put things at the edge, there's tension. You put things in the middle, it's very quiet. So you learn how things work. And every day is different. Every moment's different with a camera. So the difference in looking and seeing is that now you've got to live within that rectangle.
Right.
And I like putting it up to my eye. It's very intimate, and it's like, okay, now I'm with you, and and it's got this little thing, and see, well, you can see your reaction. See that?
Yeah.
You react to the camera, and you can't help it.
So now, all these years that you've been photographing, how many books have you released?
Well, let me first say that these stuff came to me. I didn't think, oh, someday I want to do a book on plants and seeds and flowers.
Right.
I've been a photographer for 50 years, and I started out doing a lot of commercial work. And I started doing books. I did Upland, Virginia, just a book on our county. Later, we did a book with Avery Chenoweth, the writer, and we did a book on Albemarle. And suddenly now you're going to do a book on Albemarle County. You drive around, and you see it very different. And now you see it. You don't just look at it.
Right. And you and Avery formed your own small publishing company, right? Because it is difficult to have photographic books published.
Yes, and we actually raised money and published several books. It's a very fine paper. It's clay coated, so the book becomes much more expensive than a novel.
I want to talk about the Remarkable Trees project too, because this, you said, was really life transforming for you. You basically discovered another life species for the first time. You really talk about that.
Well, let me just first say that I'm a photographer, and I always tell people that come to see me or something that there is no bad subject. There's no bad light. There's just light. There's no bad weather. There's just weather. So Nancy Ross Hugo is a garden writer, and she wanted to do a book on 100 trees of Virginia. Not necessarily the largest, but the most interesting, I guess. So Nancy knew a lot about plants, and so she would look at the tree, and I would try to find a way to photograph it. Sometimes I went back even in different weather, and a lot of times we went out on cloudy, rainy days because trees look more detail. But what happened was a transformation, because I'd always seen trees as these sort of things to be organized in the frame, just objects, shapes, colors. And she was showing me these things, and I said, this is a seed. It's born. It has children, and it dies. There was a flash that this is another civilization living with us here on Earth. Mm-hmm. And they've been here 400,000 years. Mm-hmm. And so we're living together. And a lot of people, me too, you don't notice that there's another life form all around us. There are 47 million trees in Albemarle County. I counted them. So I got more interested in how do they live, how do they interact? How do they reproduce, which is all life's mandate. So I started clipping pieces off or bringing pieces back, bringing them into the studio, and I put them on a white light table. And I noticed they really looked like the old botanical drawings where they started with a white sheet of paper. And now I'm sort of adding things rather than taking things away. And I would just look through the viewfinder and go, wow, look at this. I mean, here's the seed, here's the food, and this is all aircraft, and it looks like human blood vessels. I mean, so I talked Nancy into doing a book called Seeing Trees, which actually did really well.
Your book inspired a gentleman to go with his wife and photograph trees. Really moving story.
Photographer, a friend of mine, had a wife that had cancer and I guess a year or so to live. And so he came to me one day and he had this sort of spiral-bound book in plastic pages in it, and he started flipping through them. And they were all pictures of his wife in front of the trees that I'd photographed. And that's how they spent their last year.
And the book inspired other books. How many books? 5 books you've released inspired by that book, right?
We did publish Remarkable Trees. We didn't think we could publish Seeing Trees because it was a global book. So we got Timber Press to publish it. And they said, well, why don't you do flowers? And I said, yeah, I don't know anything about flowers. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. And I did a book on the forest. I didn't know anything about the forest. I mean, you walk through the forest and you're hiking and, oh, that was nice, that was pleasant. And you don't see anything. And there are a lot of things that see you. And doing a book on the forest was like walking into another planet. And, I'm concerned that we humans sort of live in a very small planet and we don't see the whole thing. So some of the missions of my books is to, go to the forest now and see this as your home, and see this as part of who you are.
You've been enjoying being an independent photographer for all these years, but now you are going to go out there and see what you see.
Yeah, for 15,
film whatever you want to film.
For 15 years, I had book projects, I had missions, and I had deadlines, and I really liked it. It's like I book on seeds, and I shot 2,000 seeds. There are 240,000 plant forms in the world that produce seeds. I mean, there's a lot of choices.
Right.
I've also, whenever I've photographed or traveled, and I have a whole collection of seeds and flowers and metal parts and bones and.
You collect everything. To me, it looks like art.
Well, I put them up. I want to look at them and see, because they're evidence of, there's lots of revolutions in the human civilization. And the last one is the scientific one, which is only 500 years old, which to Earth is nothing. I mean, it's, and we've advanced really quickly. I mean, we have, through this, we have iPhones and we take 1 billion pictures a day. And you could go into a forest with your phone and say, what calls out to me? What says, hey, over here, do me? And it would hurt if you left it. So, I mean, that's one way to be a photographer, just to go into that seeing mindset.
Well, and how do you feel, real quick, how do you feel about the whole digital progression as far as photography goes and what that means for photography?
Well, I used to shoot a lot of film. I've shot probably 1 million pictures. And I would get the little yellow boxes back of slides, and I would sort of see how long I could hold my breath to find out what did I get. It's like opening a lobster trap or something. And you go, oh, that worked. Oh, that didn't work. So now we have digital, and so we can look in the back of the camera and say, oh, that doesn't work. So that's better. And then we've got Photoshop, so I can paint with photographs. You can change colors and contrast and tonality.
So now with your project of filming people and humanity and your collections, that's wide open. Is it intimidating? I mean,
I don't think it's intimidating. I'm taking it slow, though, rather than like doing a script of what I want to photograph or something, which you might do with a book project. I'm just looking at them right now and say, that looks human, that looks, those are cultivators for our food. There's a jet engine there, and there's 3,000 aircraft in the air above us at any one moment. I mean, it's really part of our civilization. So how do you say that? And bones, I collect bones, and they're just lovely. The bones are so beautiful. And you look at humans. Humans have bones in there that don't do anything. that are left over from when we lived in the forest, you know. So we're a unique life form that's adapted to this planet.
Well, I am so excited about whatever you film next on this planet, and I want to thank you for hanging out with us and for encouraging me to go look at our planet, to see our planet in a different way.
So it goes back to the collect things, and one way to see it is to just pick something, you know, collect leaves or seed pods, and it changes how you see things. I walk down the street and I see so much more now having done these projects than people say, why do you do nature? You know, have you always done nature? And I said, yeah, because I've done books on cities. And they said, well, that's not nature. Yes, it is. It's like a beehive or a hornet nest or a bird nest.
Yeah.
So I don't see anything as unnatural. And so it's all sort of evidence of this civilization.
That's it for this week. For WHTJ, I'm Terry Allard. Join us next time on Charlottesville Inside Out.
Charlottesville Inside Out is made possible thanks in part to its patrons, committed to supporting the people, places, and quality of life that uniquely define Charlottesville and its surroundings, and by viewers like you. Thank you.